For this project, you'll need some woven or non-stretch fabric. I'm repurposing some from an old garment, and as you can see from the struggle, it may not be a bad idea to iron the whole thing first. You'll need some trim or lace as well, an 8-inch zipper, and the free downloadable pattern, which I will link in the video description. First, take the pattern piece for the bag itself and place it on your folded fabric where indicated, pin down and cut out, leaving the folded side uncut. Repeat this step so you have a piece for the front and for the back of the pouch. Repeat this step twice more for the pouch lining. When cutting out the front and back pieces of the pouch, you can also cut tiny notches which are printed on the pattern to use as guides. This will help you when you apply your trim later. While you have your outer fabric in front of you, you can also cut out the wrist strap, using the pattern piece included. The pattern piece used for the wrist strap also doubles as a guide for your embellishment fabric. Again, to cut the strap piece, fold your fabric in half, then pin the pattern piece where indicated on the fold. Cut out, leaving the fold uncut. Now back to our outer embellishment. Taking the same pattern piece I just used for the wrist strap, I'm going to cut a strip from a decorative fabric to go down the middle of the pouch. I've decided to double it up, but you can really make it any width that you choose. Just be sure to account for about 1/2 inch seam allowance on each side. I'm placing the pattern on the fold, but this time the fold runs lengthwise. Then I cut the piece out, leaving the fold intact. I'm also going to cut a notch at the center of each end to help me align it with the center of the pouch. I'm also folding the edges under just to get an idea of how much space I'll need, and I'll lay my trim over to see how much I need. Then I cut 2 pieces to the length that I need. At this point, you can press your embellishment piece to make sure it's smooth, then press the edges in toward the wrong side of the fabric about 1/2 inch or so. Now, with the front of the pouch, and taking note of your guide notches, carefully lay your lace down and pin in place. Now, stitch your lace at the outer edges. You can also use a basting stitch to secure the inner edges so that you can remove your pins before applying the decorative fabric. Now, take your decorative fabric, making sure the edges are still folded under, and center it on top of the lace. Pin down in place. Then carefully top stitch close to the edges. Now, to make your bow, take your bow fabric and fold it in half. Place the bow pattern on the fold where indicated and pin. Cut out, again leaving the fold uncut. Making sure the fabric is folded with the right sides together, you can then stitch around the edges using about 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just make sure to leave an opening at the center so that you can turn your bow right side out. As you can see here, I've stitched the seams shut except for this space at the center. Now clip your corners, careful to not cut into your stitching, then turn the bow right side out. Now you can attach the bow. In another video, I demonstrated how to hand stitch the center of a bow closed and gather it up, but today I'm going to show you a quicker method that I think works just as well in some cases. With the opening end of the bow at the bottom, scrunch it up with your fingers and decide where you'd like it to be. You can then unscrunch your bow, but make sure the top center is in the right place and carefully tack it down. Once you've started your stitch, lift up the presser foot, scrunch the bow back up, and make sure that the bottom edges are folded in. Then you can stitch across the gathered bow, making sure to secure it again at the bottom. Now back to the wrist strap, taking it and folding it in half lengthwise with the right sides facing or the wrong sides out, stitch along the edge using about a 3/4 inch seam allowance. Once you've stitched that, you can turn it right side out with a loop turner. Or if you don't have one of those, you can also just use a safety pin. Simply attach the pin to one of the raw edges, then push it through the tube of your strap, turning the piece as you go. Then you can press it so that it is flat. Now, with both raw ends of the wrist strap together, making sure it isn't twisted, align the edges of the strap with the edge of your front piece about 1 inch or 2 from the top. Then use your machine to tack down. Now that the front of your pouch is complete and your strap is tacked on, it's time to sew the outer pieces and inner lining together along with the zipper. Align your front piece right side up with a strap toward the center. Take your zipper and lay it so that the top side or right side of the zipper is facing the right side of your outer pouch piece. Then lay your lining piece on top, again with the right side facing down. Because my lining doesn't have a wrong or right side, I don't have to worry about it here, but if yours does, make sure to check that. Then making sure all the edges are aligned, pin at the top. This is where a zipper foot comes in handy, but since I don't know where mine is, I simply move my needle over to the left so that I'll have more of a seam allowance. Stitch along the edge using about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you've attached that side, you can trim any excess lace sticking out, and your piece should look like this when you open it. Now fold it back with the wrong sides of the outer and inner pieces facing, the front of the pouch facing up, and your zipper tape out. Now take the back outer piece of the pouch and line up its upper edge with that of your zipper, making sure the right sides of the outer pieces are facing each other. Flip the pouch over, then place the second lining piece against the zipper. Again, the right sides of the lining should be facing each other. Once again, pin the lining, zipper, and outer pieces together, making sure all edges are lined up, then sew as before. Now your pouch should look like this when you fold the sides away from the zipper. If you want to make sure your wrist strap doesn't get stuck in the seam, you can safety pin it to the center front of your pouch, but just make sure to not pin through the lining. Then unzip your zipper. Making sure the zipper is open, put your outer sides together with the right sides facing, lining up the edges, and do the same with the lining pieces. Pin around the edges, then stitch around the piece using about a 5/8 inch seam allowance, but be sure to leave the bottom of the lining edge unsewn. There should be about an opening of at least 4 to 5 inches. Once you've stitched around, you can clip your corners, making sure not to cut through the stitching. After turning it right side out and making sure to push out all your corners, you'll want to close up the hole in the lining. You can do this by hand, but a lot of times I will do it with a top stitch on the sewing machine. So fold the raw edges in and bring your needle down close to the edge of the seam. Stitch along the edge, making sure the raw edges remain folded in. Now your pouch is nearly finished. At this point, all you need to do is take an iron and make sure all the seams and edges are pressed out nice and smooth. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about this tutorial or anything else, be sure to leave a comment below or send me a message. Again, you can find the free pattern on my blog, which I have linked in the video description. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and maybe check out some of my others. Thank you again and take care.